One.
Hello, photog friends. It's Larissa here. Thanks so much for joining me. I am going to be editing my friend Melissa's photo today. She took a family photo in this beautiful field here, and she felt like the light was a little harsh, so she asked me to show her how she would edit it with Photor. Um, Honestly, Photor would not be my exact first choice because I do have Lightroom and there's some brushes and things like that that are a little bit better there. However, it's still very doable in Photor and you can still um, get a better edit with it. So the first thing I want to do when I already imported this because it took a little bit of time because it's a bigger file. So what you would do is go over to the left hand side and press rotate. And I want to straighten it. Okay, so I want to leave it like that. I think that it doesn't really have to be straightened much. I think that it's pretty straight, but you can always, play around with that right there. Um, you can certainly switch it up if you want to. Okay, the sun can be on the left or the right side, and you can make them upside down or not. Of course, we're just gonna leave it like this for now. So let's go to our basics. And also, before we go to basics, let's talk about the crop because if you are going to crop a photo, it is best to do it in the beginning. So I'm sorry that my computer is being slow tonight. It's got to load every time it does this. So you can certainly freeform it and say, okay, well, I want to make this closer, so I want to see the face is a little bit closer. You can certainly do something like that. And just press apply once you're done. And I wouldn't necessarily get it closer like this. It just depends on what you want in your picture. Somehow this is not applying. Okay, so now we're gonna go down to basic. The brightness, I feel like, is pretty good. If you increase the brightness, it's going to increase the brightness of everything, but especially it's going to increase the brightness of those highlights. So you might actually want to bring it down just slightly. Those highlights are pretty bright. Contrast, you might want to bring down slightly because that's one of the biggest issues with this picture is the contrast of the light coming in from the left-hand side. Saturation and sharpness are fine. You don't want to do something that's too saturated. I feel like the sharpness is really good. If you were to zoom in to the picture, you would see that they're all smiling and looking at the camera, and the focal point is good. So this, you don't have to change anything with those. Then I will go to fine tune, and this is where you can decrease the actual highlights and then increase the light of the shadows. So I would take those highlights down a bit to try to decrease that contrast. And then I would also decrease the shadows and play around with it, figure out where it is that is best for your picture. I mean, you don't want it quite that much, and you certainly don't want it darker. So I would pick it a little bit higher of a shadow. You could also use a little bit of coloration. You could change the temperature or the tint. Temperature, if you feel like it's too orange, you can go towards the blue, which is to the left. If you feel like it's not orange enough, you can go towards the right. I feel like this might need a slight orangish color just because you've got the sunset happening, so you want that warmth. For tint, to the left is going to make it more of a magenta color. to the right is going to make it more of a green color. Usually I stick right to 0 with that if it looks about right. You can vignette this picture. Vignette means just that it's going to darken the corners and around the outside of it. So it tends to draw your eyes towards your subject. If you do too much though, it looks a little corny. Not gonna lie. So you might just do it slightly. Some people don't like vignetting at all, but I think it's definitely a personal choice. Curves is where you are going to possibly make some adjustments with, I usually like to put just one dot in the middle. That's kind of my place where it leads to some stability. And I usually like to increase that, but just a little bit on the right hand side. The only problem with that is if I decrease the left hand side too much, it's going to add to that shadowing. So I definitely don't want to do that. I would maybe increase it slightly, gives it kind of a matte look and more of a soft finish. Oops, I didn't mean to reset that. All right. But the great thing is you can always go back and redo these things. All right, I don't need to resize this at all. I feel like the size is fine. If you wanted to go into some of the effects, you certainly can, make it black and white. I tend to make some pictures black and white where I'm just thinking the coloration is off, and I don't like certain colorations. So sometimes you can feel like, oh, I'm going to be artistic and put it in black and white. Well, sometimes you do it for other reasons too. If something doesn't look quite right with the coloration, you can't seem to get the temperature or tint to look the right way, you can always make it black and white or grayscale or something, that you're comfortable with. Put your own artistic twist on it, I wouldn't necessarily do that to this picture. I'll show you what it looks like with this. I personally like all the green and everything in it because it makes me think summer, and that's really nice right now to think summer. So I would just say, well, I'm going to cancel that out. But we can go back and see what the original is by clicking up on the top, the original button. That's the original. And then you can undo and see what the after is. The shadowing has lessened, but if you want to lessen it even more, you would maybe go to beauty. And just as it's not necessarily meant to be used this way, but because they don't have a whole lot of brushes available here, I would actually use this teeth whitening brush to try to lighten up the sides of their faces. It is not going to be exceptional, but it is probably going to get the job done. So let's decrease the brush size. And as you can see, you've got a little bit of whitening on there. I would decrease the intensity because I don't want her to look too bluish color. Decrease the intensity. It still is going to lighten that side of them. And I would just go through and do this with each one. Again, when it comes to something like a Lightroom has a little bit more options. In order to save this, I'll just apply that for now. I'm not going to go through each one of them. But in order to save this, you're going to go up to the Save button and go ahead and name it and then download. And you can share your amazing work now. Yay! Wonderful. I hope that was